7 years later, the prince saw his ex-lover's 5-year-old son and was shocked by the resemblance. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The carriage wheels rattled over the stones, and Prince Alejandro de Castillas kept his gaze fixed on the narrow slice of sky above the street. "Your Highness," the chamberlain murmured at his side, "the governor of Granada awaits you at the Plaza Mayor. After that, we have the inspection of the granaries, then the council meeting, then—" Alejandro lifted a hand. "I have read the itinerary, Don Mateo. No need to recite it again." The chamberlain bowed his head, chastened but not offended. "Of course, sir. It is only that the governor is a nervous man. He insisted that I remind you of every detail." Alejandro almost smiled. Governors are often nervous men. They spend their lives trying to please kings they rarely see. "And princes," the chamberlain added carefully. "And princes," Alejandro conceded. He turned his head slightly and let his gaze move over the faces lining the street. Women with shawls, men with work-roughened hands, children craning their necks for a better view. Some waved, some bowed, some simply stared. He could feel the weight of every eye. A troop of soldiers rode ahead, not with weapons raised, only as a symbol of the crown. Behind the carriage, servants and secretaries and minor officials clung to their places, careful not to step out of order. "Does Her Grace write again?" Alejandro asked suddenly. Don Mateo blinked. "Her Grace, the Duchess." "Yes, Your Highness. A letter arrived 2 days ago. It waits in your trunk. Do you wish me to bring it this evening?" "That will do," Alejandro said. He did not ask what she had written. He knew already. News of the court, concerns about alliances, a gentle reminder that he must attend to the council's demands when he returned to Madrid. Sophia's letters were always correct, always reasonable, always bloodless. The carriage turned a corner, and the street opened into a broader square. Balconies crowded with people leaned over the scene. Flags fluttered from a few windows. The governor waited near the center, his belly straining against a formal coat, his face flushed with anxiety. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Alejandro stepped down into the sunlight, accepted the governor's awkward bow, and heard the practiced words. "Your Highness, Granada is honored beyond measure by your visit. We are at your service in all things." "You honor me with your welcome," Alejandro replied. "I look forward to knowing your city better." There followed the usual compliments, the exchange of small gifts, the careful arrangements of protocol. Alejandro stood, bowed when necessary, smiled when expected. His mind moved through each gesture with the calm precision of a man who had done this all his life. "Shall we proceed to the council hall, Your Highness?" the governor asked, wiping his forehead with a cloth he thought nobody noticed. "In a moment," Alejandro said. "I should like to walk a little. The journey was long. Fresh air will do me good." The governor looked startled. "Walk, Your Highness. Through the square?" Alejandro's lips lifted faintly. "I promise not to disappear. You may accompany me, if it eases your mind." They set off at a measured pace, flanked by a few guards who kept a respectful distance. People drew back as he passed, but not so far that he could not see their faces. A woman made the sign of the cross. A boy grinned openly. An old man nodded, solemn and proud. Alejandro let the sounds of the square wash over him, merchants calling out, children laughing, a donkey braying somewhere behind a row of stalls. It was ordinary life, the kind he had never known. "Your Highness," the governor began, eager to impress, "our harvest this year has been most—" Alejandro did not hear the rest. His feet kept moving, but his attention suddenly was elsewhere. Near the edge of the square, beneath a faded awning, someone was setting out books on a narrow table. Not stacks, just a few rows, carefully arranged. The woman bent over the table, aligning the volumes, her movements economical and precise. It was nothing, just another stall among many. Yet something in the tilt of her head caught him like a hand to the chest. He slowed. "Is something amiss, Your Highness?" the governor asked. Alejandro did not answer. He was watching the woman at the bookstall. Her hair was gathered at the nape of her neck in a simple knot. She wore a plain dress, the color of which he barely registered. What held him was the way she moved, the way she paused over each book as if it mattered, the way she turned slightly to listen when someone spoke nearby. Her face turned just enough for him to see the line of her cheek. It is a coincidence, he told himself. The square seemed to narrow around him. The woman straightened and passed a book to a young girl, saying something he could not hear. Her voice was carried away by the noise of the square, but the gesture, the slight uplifting of her mouth, the way her eyes softened as she addressed the child. Alejandro's hands tightened behind his back. "Your Highness," the Chamberlain murmured, noticing his distraction. "Who is that?" Alejandro asked quietly. The governor followed his gaze. "Ah, that stall belongs to a young woman named Santiago. Isabella Santiago, I believe. She teaches letters to some of the local children, and sells a few books when she can. A respectable sort, I am told." Quiet. Isabella Santiago. The name fell like a stone into deep water. He felt his pulse in his throat. The governor, unaware of the storm he had unleashed, continued. "She arrived in Granada some years ago. Alone, I think. People were curious for a time. But she has done nothing to attract attention, and so the city gradually forgot to wonder about her." Alejandro could no longer hear him. He was watching Isabella. So she had not disappeared into the earth. She had not sunk in shame as his cowardly mind had sometimes pictured. She had simply gone on, without him. For a moment, the years compressed. He saw her as she had been in Madrid, laughing in the shadow of a bookcase, her fingers ink-stained from moving volumes all day, looking up at him in the garden behind her father's shop, her eyes full of trust she had never voiced aloud. He turned his head slightly, as if to dislodge the memory. "So, Your Highness," the Chamberlain whispered, "shall we continue? The council hall—" Alejandro did not move. At that moment, a small boy darted into view from behind the stall. "Mama!" The word rang clearly through the noise. Isabella bent at once, turning toward the sound. By chance, the boy turned as well. For a heartbeat, he faced the square, his gaze lifted in open curiosity. Alejandro's breath left him. The child was perhaps 5 years old. No more. His hair was dark and unruly, his skin sun-touched from hours outdoors. None of that mattered. What mattered were his eyes. They were the exact shade Alejandro saw in the mirror each morning. Not merely the color, but the shape, the slight downward slant at the corners that made every expression seem more earnest than it was. Even the way the boy's eyebrows drew together in concentration as he studied the prince's carriage was painfully familiar. The boy's mouth curved into a half smile, not careless, tentative, as if he were amused but did not wish to show it too boldly. Alejandro had seen that same expression in sketches of himself as a child. His fingers dug into the palm of his own hand until he felt the dull ache. "Mama, look!" the boy cried, tugging at Isabella's skirt. "The prince!" "Hush, Luis," she answered, her voice sharper than before, perhaps from fear, perhaps from habit. "Do not point. It is impolite." Luis. He had a name. Alejandro could not move. His world had narrowed to that small face and the familiar lines of it. "Your Highness," the governor repeated. "Shall we—" Alejandro forced himself to straighten. "Stop the carriage," he said, though they were not in it. The Chamberlain looked confused. "We are on foot, sir." "Then stop the procession," Alejandro snapped more sharply than he intended. The guards halted at once. The governor swallowed. "Is something wrong, Your Highness? Do you feel unwell?" Alejandro gathered himself. "No. I simply wish to speak with one of your citizens." He walked toward the bookstall before anyone could protest. Every step seemed to echo. Isabella, hearing the change in the noise around her, turned fully. Her eyes found him. For the first time in 7 years, they looked at one another. She went very still. "Your Highness," she said at once, lowering her gaze and dipping in a small curtsy. Her voice was clear, controlled. There was no hint of the girl who had once laughed without restraint. "Granada is honored by your visit." His name did not pass her lips. No memory of Madrid, only the proper address for a prince. "Madam," he began, and heard the roughness in his own voice. He cleared his throat. "You sell books here?" "Yes, Your Highness. A few. And I teach some of the children in the neighborhood to read and write when their parents allow it." Her hands were steady on the edge of the table. Luis pressed closer to her, looking up at Alejandro with open curiosity. "Is that the prince?" he whispered. "Hush," she murmured again, pressing a light hand to his shoulder. "What is your name, boy?" Alejandro asked, because he could not help himself. The child straightened, as if remembering a lesson. "Luis, Your Highness." "And how old are you, Luis?" "5, sir." The answer struck Alejandro like a physical blow. He kept his face smooth through sheer will. "5," he repeated. "Yes, Your Highness," the boy said, pleased to be speaking properly. "My mother says that when I was born it was raining very hard and the roof—" He stopped, glancing at Isabella. "That is enough," she said gently. "The prince has no time for such stories." Alejandro swallowed. "I always have time for stories," he said slowly. "But another day, perhaps. I would not keep your mother from her work." Luis nodded solemnly. "Yes, Your Highness." He stepped back, but did not stop watching Alejandro. Isabella lifted her head again, meeting the prince's gaze for a brief moment. "Your visit honors us," she repeated. "If any of the children in this neighborhood may be of service, we would be proud to assist in whatever small way we can." "There is no need," he said. "You serve the kingdom already, teaching them. A people who can read is less easily led astray." A hint of surprise flickered in her eyes. Perhaps she had not expected him to notice such a thing. "Thank you, Your Highness." He wanted to ask her 100 questions. Why she had come to Granada, how she had lived, whether the boy's father, but he could not form the words with the governor and the guards behind him, the square listening in a silence heavy with curiosity. He stepped back. "Continue with your day," he said formally. "I would not disturb you further." "You do not disturb us, sir," she replied, though her hands tightened on the table's edge. He turned away before his control slipped. As he walked back to the waiting officials, he felt Luis's gaze burn between his shoulder blades. The governor hurried to his side, half panicked. "Your Highness, if there is some problem with the stall, I can have it moved. The square must be pleasing to you, and if you find the sight of books or of the woman objectionable, we can—" Alejandro's head snapped around. "Do nothing," he said sharply. "The stall remains where it is." "But have I not been plain?" he said, his voice cold now. The governor paled. "Yes, Your Highness, forgive me." Don Mateo, walking a little behind, observed in silence. He had seen his master distracted before. He had never seen him shaken. The rest of the walk to the council hall passed in a blur. Alejandro heard words about taxes and grain and trade routes, but they washed through him like water. He responded when required, gave decisions where needed, but half his mind remained in the square, at the small table of books, beside the boy with his eyes. That evening, in the governor's residence, he sat before an untouched plate. Candles burned low. A servant poured wine, then retreated. Don Mateo shuffled a stack of papers. "Your Highness, if you are too tired to attend to these reports tonight, I can—" "Leave them," Alejandro said. "As you wish, sir." The chamberlain hesitated. "Shall I send for the physician? You seem unwell." "I am not unwell," Alejandro replied. "I am distracted." "May I be of service?" Don Mateo asked gently. Alejandro studied him for a moment. "How long has that woman been in Granada?" he asked. Don Mateo blinked. "What woman, Your Highness?" "The one at the bookstall. Isabella Santiago." "Oh." The chamberlain looked down, feigning a search in his memory. In truth, he had made inquiries already, guessing the prince's interest. "The governor's man told me she has lived here for about 6 years, sir, perhaps a little more. They are not entirely certain when she arrived. She came quietly, took a small room, began teaching children." "And the boy?" Alejandro asked. "Luis. He is her son, Your Highness." Alejandro's jaw tightened. "I am not ignorant, Don Mateo. I know that much. I asked for details." "Of course, sir. Forgive me." The chamberlain consulted a small notebook. "He is 5 years of age. The neighbors say he has always been bright. He was born here in Granada. The midwife remembers a hard night of rain, but a simple birth. There is no mention of a father in any record. No man has ever been seen claiming such a place in their household." 5, Alejandro repeated, his voice flat. "Yes, Your Highness." He leaned back in his chair. The candles cast shadows along his face, deepening the hollows beneath his eyes. "Did anyone mention where she came from before Granada?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Some recall her saying she lived in Madrid. Her father ran a bookshop there. She spoke of it when she first arrived." "Madrid, of course." Alejandro closed his eyes for a moment. The memory of that shop rose unbidden, the smell of ink and paper, the narrow aisles, the way Isabella had moved among the stacks as if they were friends. "Your Highness," Don Mateo ventured, "if this subject troubles you, I can instruct the governor to end any talk." A prince owes no explanation for a passing curiosity. Alejandro opened his eyes slowly. "This is not a passing curiosity." The chamberlain swallowed. "No, sir." Silence stretched between them. "Leave me," Alejandro said at last. "I will read the reports later." Don Mateo bowed. "As you wish, Your Highness. If you need anything, I will call." The chamberlain withdrew, closing the door softly behind him. Alejandro sat alone. The room was comfortable, though unfamiliar. Tapestries hung on the walls, some depicting battles long past, others scenes of saints and miracles. He barely saw them. 5 years old. He did the calculations without needing numbers. He knew exactly when he had last seen Isabella in Madrid. The memory of that day was carved into him with humiliating clarity. The purse of coins, the way she had stared at it as if he had struck her, the way she had forced herself to stand straight even as her world broke. He had not seen her since. He had married Sophia as the council demanded. He had attended ceremonies, signed decrees, smiled for the people. He had never once inquired what had become of the girl he had sent away. He stared at his hands. Luis's hands were smaller, of course, but the shape of the fingers, the angle of the wrist as he tugged at his mother's skirt, even that had seemed familiar. He rose abruptly and crossed the room to the window. The shutters were open. Beyond the courtyard, he could see the faint glow of the city at night. Somewhere among those dim lights, a boy slept in a narrow bed, unaware that his existence had just been discovered by the man who might be his father. Alejandro's throat tightened. "What if I am wrong?" he thought. "What if the resemblance is a trick of memory?" He knew that faces could be deceiving. People saw what they wished to see. That was why crowns gleamed, to blind the eye. Yet there was the matter of time, of place, of silence. He remembered Isabella's eyes in the square that morning. There had been no shock in them at the sight of him. Only control. A control carefully built, like a wall around a house one cannot afford to lose. She had not spoken his name. She had not demanded anything. She had not even allowed anger to cross her face. It was as if she had prepared herself long ago for the possibility of seeing him again, and decided that, if that day came, he would find nothing to grasp. He turned away from the window. He could have pretended. He could have called it coincidence. He could have instructed Don Mateo to forget the matter, ignored the bookstall, and left Granada with his schedule completed and his conscience only slightly more burdened than before. But as he thought of Luis saying with bright seriousness, "5, sir," something inside him shifted. A man could ignore many things. A prince, even more. But could a father ignore the possibility of his own son? He went to the small table where his gloves lay. Beside them, the sealed letter from his wife waited. The Duchess's handwriting was precise, elegant, flawless. He set the letter aside. Then he pulled the bell cord. Don Mateo appeared within moments as if he had been waiting just outside. "You called, Your Highness?" "Send for a man you trust," Alejandro said. "Someone discreet, someone without loose lips." The chamberlain hesitated only a heartbeat. "There is Captain Ruiz, sir. He has served your household for years. Quiet, loyal." "Good. Send him to me." "Yes, Your Highness." Moments later, a firm knock sounded on the door. "Enter," Alejandro said. A man of middle years stepped in, wearing a plain uniform and a guarded expression. "You sent for me, Your Highness?" Alejandro studied him. "Captain Ruiz, is it?" "Yes, sir." "You have served my house for how long?" 14 years, Your Highness. "And in that time, have you ever betrayed a confidence?" "Never, sir." Alejandro nodded. "Then listen carefully. There is a woman who keeps a stall of books in the Plaza Mayor. Her name is Isabella Santiago. She has a son called Luis. I wish to know everything that can be learned about them. How long they have been here, who their friends are, who supports them, what people say of them, what people think of the boy. Leave no trace of your question. Speak as a man who is merely curious if you must speak at all. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Highness." "Report to me alone," Alejandro added. No one else is to hear what you discover. Not the governor. Not Don Mateo. No one. Ruiz's gaze did not flicker. As you command, sir. You may go. The captain bowed, turned, and left without another word. When the door closed, Alejandro lowered himself slowly into the chair again. He drew a long breath. Outside, the city continued its quiet night. A dog barked in some distant alley. A clock struck the hour. Alejandro leaned his elbows on his knees and pressed his hands together. He had faced councils, ambassadors, dignitaries. He had listened to arguments of war and peace. He had signed papers that affected thousands of lives without feeling half the fear that now lay in his chest at the thought of a single answer. Because if Captain Ruiz returned with what his heart already suspected, everything he thought fixed in his life would shift on its foundations. Marriage, duty, name, inheritance, all of it. Yet he knew, with a clarity that left him more exhausted than any journey, that he could not turn away now. His voice, when he finally spoke into the empty room, was quiet, almost a whisper. I need to know if he is mine. Captain Ruiz stood with his hands clasped behind his back, boots faintly dusty from the streets of Granada. Alejandro watched him from the window. Well, the prince asked. She has lived here 6.5 years, Your Highness, Ruiz said. Arrived alone, rented a small room above the dressmaker's shop on Calle de la Acequia. No husband, no male relative. She began teaching children to read soon after. Opened the bookstall a little later. And the boy? Born in Granada, Ruiz replied. Midwife's name is Doña Pilar. I spoke with her this morning. She remembers the night clearly. Heavy rain, leaking roof, a stubborn child who did not want to wait. Alejandro's fingers tightened on the window frame. How old did she say he is? 5 years, nearly 6, Ruiz answered. Born in early spring. The neighbors say his birthday falls just after the feast of St. Joseph. Alejandro did not need a calendar. He saw dates in his mind as clearly as ink on paper. The child's full name, he asked. Luis Santiago, Ruiz said. No father named in the record. No man has ever claimed the role. Some have tried to call on the mother, but she turned them away. She has lived quietly, works hard, pays what she owes. Alejandro nodded slowly. Thank you. Shall I continue to observe, sir? Ruiz asked. Or is this enough? Alejandro's gaze remained on the city, the roofs, the narrow streets, the pale line of distant hills. That will be all for now, he said. Speak of this to no one. Of course, Your Highness. The door closed behind the captain. Alejandro stayed at the window a moment longer, though he saw nothing. Early spring, 6 years ago, Madrid. The memory rose, sharp and unwanted. The bookshop had smelled of ink and paper and dust. Shelves climbed the walls. Light slipped between them in slim beams. Isabella stood on a ladder, reaching for a volume on a higher shelf. You will fall one day, Alejandro said from below, and your father will blame me. She glanced down, a smile tugging at her mouth. Why you? She asked. Because you bought too many books, Your Highness. Because I distracted his daughter from her work, he said. Someone must be held responsible. You are safe then, she answered, retrieving the book and descending carefully. I am rarely distracted. He raised an eyebrow. No, not when I am among books, she said, handing him the volume. They do not lie. They do not make promises they cannot keep. He winced slightly. You think I lie? She flushed, realizing how her words sounded. I did not mean you, sir. I meant people in general. People in general, he repeated, and princes in particular. She swallowed. You are also a person, Your Highness. At least, I assume so. He laughed, a sound more genuine than the polite chuckles he gave at court. Sometimes I am not sure, he said. Sometimes I think I am only a uniform and a list of duties. Her gaze softened. You are more than that, she said quietly. Whether they see it or not. He looked at her for a long moment. Come, he said. Walk with me in the garden. Your father is asleep at his desk. He will not notice you are gone for half an hour. I should close the shop, she began. You should live for a few moments as if closing the shop could wait, he answered. Please, Isabella. She hesitated, then nodded. All right, half an hour. No more. They slipped through the back door into the garden behind the shop. It was small, but there were a few trees, a patch of herbs, a bench worn smooth by years. She walked beside him, hands clasped. You were late today, she said without looking at him. I thought perhaps the palace had forgotten we existed. The palace forgets everything that does not shine or shout, he said. But I did not forget. Were you delayed by important matters? She asked with a hint of teasing. Or did you simply oversleep? Very important matters, he said. A long discussion about which ambassador should sit nearest the king at dinner. She laughed. That is important? To some, apparently. What do you think is important? She asked. He considered. This, he said. Walking here, being no one in particular for a little while. You are still the prince, she reminded him, even here. Am I? He asked. If I fall into that fountain, do you think they will crown the fish instead? She stifled a smile. Do not fall into the fountain, sir. Your guard will blame me. They blame you already, he said, for taking up my time. You come here of your own will, she replied. I have never asked you for anything. He looked at her firmly. That is not true. She blinked. What have I asked? Honesty, he said. You have never pretended to be impressed when you are not. You have never laughed at me because of my title. You have never bowed lower than necessary. That is asking much in this city. She studied him, her expression serious now. Would you rather I pretended, Your Highness? No, he said at once. I would rather you remained exactly as you are. Her breath caught. A distant bell rang, marking the hour. I must go back, she said quickly. If my father wakes... Yes, he said. Go. She turned toward the door, then paused. Will you come tomorrow? She asked, not meeting his eyes. He did not answer immediately. He was watching the way her fingers twisted in her apron. If the palace allows, he said, I will come. She nodded and slipped inside. He remained in the garden a little longer, looking at the empty bench. That had been the ordinary part. The part that made the memory ache. The extraordinary part came weeks later, in the great hall under crystal chandeliers and painted ceilings. Alejandro stood beside his father, the king. The room was full. Nobles in glittering clothes, foreign envoys, musicians waiting for the signal to play. The herald's voice rang out. Her Grace, Duchess Sofia of Valdeoro. The woman who entered was composed, graceful, every step careful without seeming hesitant. Her gown shimmered softly. Her dark hair was arranged with small jewels. Alejandro had seen portraits. Now he saw a person. She approached the dais and curtsied deeply. Your Majesties, she said, it is an honor. Rise, my daughter, the Queen said kindly. You are most welcome. My daughter. The words were not casual. The king smiled, glancing at Alejandro. Tonight, he announced to the hall, we celebrate not only our guest, but the joining of two realms. In due time we shall witness the marriage of our son, Prince Alejandro de Castillas, to Her Grace Duchess Sofia of Valdeoro, by agreement of both our houses. Applause broke out. Murmurs. Faces turned toward the prince. Alejandro felt his heart jerk, like a horse reined in too sharply. He had known of discussions. He had heard hints. But no one had told him the announcement would be made tonight. Not like this. Not in front of everyone, with no chance to prepare his face. His father looked at him with a warning in his eyes. Alejandro stepped forward, schooling his features. He bowed to Sofia. Your Grace, he said, his voice steady. It will be my honor to fulfill the wishes of our families. She studied him with level eyes. I hope we shall both find contentment in that duty, she answered. The court buzzed with satisfaction. An alliance confirmed, a future secured. Later that night, in a smaller room, the king spoke plainly. You will treat this union as sacred, he said. This marriage secures peace. Old grievances will be put aside. Trade will open. Our children will inherit a stronger kingdom. Alejandro sat opposite him, stiff-backed. And if I... he began, then stopped. If you what? The king asked. If I wished to... choose my own wife, Alejandro forced out. The king's gaze hardened. You had 20 years to wish, Alejandro. You had the luxury of youth. That time is over. What if there is someone... There will always be someone, his father said. Every man who wears a crown makes sacrifices. You are not unique. You will marry Sofia. You will give thanks for the honor. And you will not shame this family by playing the lovesick boy. Alejandro's jaw clenched. And if I refuse, he said quietly. His father's voice dropped. Then you will be refusing your birthright. You will be setting aside the crown. Is that what you want? Alejandro could not answer. The king leaned back. Think carefully, he said. You are not just a man, Alejandro, you are a symbol, and symbols do not belong to themselves. That night, Alejandro lay awake, staring at the canopy above his bed. He thought of the garden behind the bookshop, of Isabella's smile, of the way she said his name when they were alone, without title. He thought of war, of borders, of hungry mouths, of his mother's tired eyes. By dawn, he had made a choice. He told himself it was the only one he could make. 2 days later, he went to the bookshop. Isabella looked up from the counter when he entered, her face lit, then sobered as she saw his expression. Your Highness, she said cautiously. Is your father here? He asked. He is visiting a supplier, she said. He will return in an hour. Is something wrong? Yes, Alejandro said. Come with me, please. She hesitated. The shop. Lock the door, he said. There was something in his tone that left no room for argument. She complied, hands trembling slightly. They went through the back door into the garden. The small space that had seemed a refuge before now felt like a stage. What has happened? She asked. You look ill. I am not ill, he said. I am engaged. She stared. Engaged? Yes. To whom? She whispered, though she already guessed. Duchess Sophia of Valdeoro, he said. By agreement of our families. Isabella swallowed. When? She asked. The announcement was made 2 nights ago, he said. The court is delighted. And you? She asked. He looked away. I have no choice. There was a brief, sharp silence. You always have a choice, she said softly. Not in this, he answered. Not if I wish to remain who I am. Who you are, she repeated. A prince. Yes, he said. She drew herself up. And what am I? She asked. In this choice of yours? His eyes met hers. You are. His voice failed him for a moment. You are the one who must disappear. She flinched as if struck. Disappear, she repeated. It is not safe, he said quickly. If anyone knew, if there were rumors, it would harm you. The court can be cruel. They would call you things you do not deserve. They would say you sought to ensnare me, that you— I did not, she said sharply. I never asked you for anything. I know, he said. That is why I must do this, while I still can, while no one suspects. She stared at him, breathing fast. What are you saying? She demanded. Say it plainly, Your Highness. Do not hide behind kindness. He forced himself to speak. This must end, Isabella, he said. All of it. You must leave Madrid. She laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. Leave Madrid, she said, just like that. Yes. And go where? She asked. Float into the air. I have made arrangements, he said quickly, as if that made it better. There is a coachman I trust. He will take you south, to Granada. There is a room waiting, money enough to keep you until you find your way. Money, she said, her voice flat. He reached into his coat and drew out a leather purse, heavy with coins. He held it out. Her eyes dropped to it, then rose to his face. For your trouble, he said, hating the words as they left his mouth. For your inconvenience. I do not wish to see you suffer. Inconvenience, she repeated. I am trying to protect you, he insisted. If you stay, if anyone learns, I could not bear to see you ruined. You think I am not ruined already? She asked quietly. He swallowed. When the marriage is settled, he said, when time has passed, perhaps we will both forget. Forget, she whispered. Forget that you ever came through that door. Forget that you ever held my hand. Forget that you ever kissed me and swore you envied the people in the stories who chose their own lives. He shut his eyes briefly. I was foolish, he said. I spoke as a boy. And now you speak as a prince, she said. Is that it? Yes, he answered. She looked at the purse again. And if I refuse your money? She asked. He hesitated. Then you would make this harder than it has to be, he said. You would force me to think you wished for scandal, that you hoped I would be weak. She stared at him, hurt and fury battling on her face. Is that what you think of me? She asked. After all this time? No, he said quickly. I think you are better than I deserve. That is why I am asking you to go, Before I destroy your life completely." He took her hand and pressed the purse into it. The weight settled heavily against her skin. She did not close her fingers around it. "Look at me," she said. He obeyed. She held his gaze for a long moment. "Tell me this is what you want," she said. "Not as a prince, as a man. Tell me you do not love me, that this is what you wish." He opened his mouth. No sound came. She waited. He could not say the words. Her lips trembled. "I thought so," she said. "But your silence is not enough." She looked down at the purse. "When do I leave?" she asked. "Tonight," he said hoarsely. "The coachman will come after dark. Take only what you need, he will have the rest." "I see," she said. She closed her hand around the purse then, as if sealing something inside herself. "Then go, Your Highness," she said. "If I must disappear, let it begin now." "Isabella, do not say my name again," she said, her voice breaking at the edges. "You have already taken enough." He flinched. "Forgive me," he whispered. "No," she said. "I will not. Not now. Perhaps one day I will stop thinking of you. That will be forgiveness enough." She turned and walked toward the shop door. He stood there, listening to the click of the latch, the dull thud of the inner door closing. That night, a coach rolled quietly out of Madrid. Inside, Isabella sat with a small trunk at her feet and the purse on her lap. She did not look back at the city. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. When the coach stopped at a wayside inn, the driver helped her down. "Granada by tomorrow evening, señorita," he said. "There is a room waiting. The gentleman gave clear instructions." "The gentleman," she said softly. She went inside, ate a little bread, drank water. The world felt distant, as if she were watching herself from far away. On the second day of the journey, she felt ill. The rocking of the coach worsened it. By the time she reached Granada, she could barely stand. "You are pale," the woman who rented rooms said. "Sit down. You have traveled too hard." Isabella nodded, pressing a hand to her middle. Weeks passed before she understood what her body was trying to say. When the realization struck, she sat on the narrow bed, the purse open beside her, coins gleaming in the dim light. "A child," she whispered. "His child." She pressed both hands to her abdomen, as if she could shield the small life forming there from everything outside. "You will not be a scandal," she said aloud. "You will not be a shame." She thought of returning to Madrid, of marching into the palace, of throwing the purse at Alejandro's feet. Then she imagined courtiers' faces, whispers, the king's eyes, the weight of their judgment falling not on Alejandro, who could bear it, but on the small life inside her, who could not. "No," she whispered. She would not go back. She used the money he had given her to pay the midwife, to buy food, to secure the small room. When Luis was born in the middle of a storm, crying loudly enough to wake the street, she held him close and thought, "This is what remains." She did not speak Alejandro's name. She did not curse him. She did not bless him. She simply went on. Years later in Granada, she stood in a modest salon in the governor's residence, her hands folded tightly in front of her. A servant had arrived at her door that morning with a message she had hoped never to receive. "The prince requests your presence," he had said. Now here she was. The room was not large, a few chairs, a table, a tapestry on the wall. Sunlight fell in a pale line across the floor. Alejandro stood near the window, back half turned to her. He wore dark clothes, simple for a prince, but his bearing made them regal anyway. She did not let herself notice more. "Your Highness," she said, her voice calm, "you sent for me." He turned. For a moment, they only looked at each other. He had changed. There were faint lines at the corners of his eyes, a heaviness in his gaze, but he was still the man she had once known. He dismissed the servants with a small gesture. The door closed. They were alone. "Thank you for coming," he said. "As you well know," she replied, "I could hardly refuse." He flinched a little at her tone. "How have you been, Isabella?" he asked. She lifted her chin. "I have managed," she said. "Granada is kind to those who work." "You teach children," he said. "You sell books. Your captain has been busy," she replied. "I had to know," he said quietly. "I had to understand." "There is nothing to understand," she answered. "I left Madrid, as you wished. I asked for nothing. I have kept to myself. You owe me no explanation now, and I owe you none." He took a step closer. "And the boy?" he asked. She forced her face to remain neutral. Luis is my son, she said. He is well. Your son, he repeated. Yes. Only yours? He asked. She stared at him. What are you asking, Your Highness? He drew a breath. Isabella. Who is Luis? For a moment, Isabella did not answer. The room seemed smaller than before, the air tighter. She lifted her eyes to his. Luis is my son, she said. That is all. Alejandro took another step toward her. It is not all, he replied. Not for me. It must be, she said calmly. You are a married man, a prince. Your concerns should be with your wife and your court, not with a boy who sells books in a square. His jaw tightened. Do not speak of him as if he were nothing, he said. I saw him, Isabella. I know, she replied. I was there. He has my eyes, Alejandro said quietly. Children resemble many people, she answered. Their mothers, their neighbors, some distant uncle you never met. Faces repeat themselves. Do they also repeat births in early spring? He asked. 6 years after a girl was sent away from Madrid with a purse of coins and a broken heart? She stiffened. Your captain has been busy indeed, she said. You did not deny living in Madrid, he replied. You did not deny leaving when I told you to go. Why should I? She asked. You know those things already. They cost you nothing to recall. He took a breath, forcing his voice to stay low. Tell me the truth, he said. Is he mine? She looked at him for a long time. What difference would it make? She asked. Will you take him to Madrid? Dress him in fine clothes? Seat him at your table between your wife and your queen? That is not an answer, he said. It is the only one I can give, she replied. He moved closer still. If he is my son, he said, then I have responsibilities. Your responsibilities are to your crown, she said sharply. You made that clear when you sent me away. Do not pretend now that you care for other duties. I do care, he said. I care very much. Since when? She asked. Since you saw a face that troubled your sleep? He winced. I deserve that, he said. But he does not. Do not use him to punish me. Her voice softened a fraction. I am not using him, she said. I am protecting him. From what? He demanded. From a father? From a world that would chew him up and spit him out, she answered. From whispers and calculations and the cold eyes of people who measure worth by bloodlines and titles. Do you not remember your own court, Alejandro? He flinched at the use of his name. I remember, he said. I also remember the boy I saw in the square, staring at me as if he had known me all his life. Of course he stared, she said. You are the prince. Children stare at crowns. He stared as if he were looking in a mirror, Alejandro said. Do you never see it? She closed her eyes briefly. I see my son, she said. Nothing more, nothing less. Then look at me and say he is not mine, he said. Say it, and I will leave you in peace. I will go back to Madrid and never trouble you again. Her eyes flew open. You dare make such a promise, she said. After the last one? I am not asking you to trust me, he replied. I am asking you to speak. Silence fell. She looked away toward the window. Outside, the sound of the city drifted faintly. I will not stand in front of you and lie, she said at last. His chest tightened. Then he is... She raised a hand. I will not say the words you want, she cut in. You have your suspicions. Keep them, guard them, lock them in some private drawer of your heart. But do not drag my son into your struggle. Do not come near him with questions you should have asked 6 years ago. He took a step back as if her words had pushed him. You would have me do nothing, he said. I would have you remember who you are, she answered. You are a prince. You are married to a duchess. You are the hope of 2 kingdoms. You are not a man who can suddenly claim a child in Granada and expect the world to accept it as a charming story. I do not care what the world accepts, he said. That is not true, she replied quietly. If it were, you would have chosen differently once. He swallowed. I made a mistake, he said, a terrible one. Yes, she said simply. You did. Let me repair what I can, he pleaded. I cannot change the past, but I can... You can what? She asked. Tell your council that you have an illegitimate child and expect them to applaud your honesty. Introduce Luis to your wife at dinner. Ask her to smile and accept that the boy you hid in your heart is now a boy walking your halls. You speak as if she would have no choice, he muttered. And would she? Isabella asked. "Does any of you truly have a choice up there on your hill of stone?" He dragged a hand through his hair. "Isabella, listen to me." "No," she said. "You have done enough speaking. Go now. Go back to your residence, to your papers, to your careful schedules. Leave me to the life I built with the rewards of your kindness." The word tasted bitter. He stepped closer again. "I will not leave this alone," he said. "I cannot. If he is my son, I must—" "Then do it far from his hearing," she interrupted. "Do whatever investigations you need. Ask your priest about records. Ask the midwife about dates. Turn your palace into a ledger if that pleases you. But leave Luis out of it. He is a child, not a puzzle for you to solve." "He is my child," Alejandro said. She stared at him. "You lost the right to say that when you put this in my hand," she answered. She reached into the pocket of her skirt and pulled out a small leather purse, old, worn, but familiar. He stared at it, stunned. "You kept it," he whispered. "For years, it was all I had," she said. "I bought bread with your apology. I paid for a roof with your goodbye. I brought your son into the world with your silence rattling at the bottom of a drawer." His throat closed. "Isabella, you told me to disappear," she said. "I did as you wished. Now you wish to summon me back at your convenience, like some servant you forgot to dismiss properly. I will not be summoned, Alejandro." He took a breath. "What do you want from me?" he asked, almost helpless. "Nothing," she said. "That is what you offered me once. I have learned to live with it." He shook his head. "I cannot accept that," he said. "I will not. I will return. We will speak again. Do not trouble yourself," she said. "I will not open the door next time." "Then I will find you in the square," he replied. "In front of everyone, if I must." Her eyes flashed. "You would risk that?" she asked. "You would risk even the hint of scandal, for a boy you were too afraid to imagine 6 years ago?" "Yes," he said. She studied him, trying to read the man behind the title. "Then you have changed," she said quietly. "But I have changed as well." He hesitated. "Meaning? Meaning I will not be broken so easily," she answered. "If you come, I will stand my ground. If they whisper, I will let them. I have no court to impress, only a son to protect." He exhaled slowly. "Then we are at war," he said, half bitter, half resigned. "No," she replied. "We were at war once. You won. This is something else." He could not answer that. A knock sounded at the door. "Your Highness?" Don Mateo's voice came from outside. "The governor waits for you. The council is convened." Alejandro closed his eyes briefly. "Enter," he called. The chamberlain opened the door a crack, then wider when he saw Isabella. "Oh," he said, recovering quickly. "Forgive me, I did not realize." "It is nothing," Alejandro said. "You may speak." "The council is waiting, sir," Don Mateo repeated. "They hope to begin with your approval." "Tell them I will be there shortly," Alejandro replied. "Yes, Your Highness." The chamberlain retreated. Alejandro looked back at Isabella. "This conversation is not finished," he said. "For me, it is," she answered. She dipped in a small, stiff curtsy. "Your Highness." She turned and walked to the door without waiting for permission. He watched her go. When the latch clicked, he let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Later that day, in the council chamber, men spoke of taxes and roads. Alejandro sat at the head of the table, hands folded, hearing almost nothing. A councillor droned on about grain reserves. "Your Highness," he said at last, "do you approve the governor's plan?" Alejandro blinked. "Repeat it," he said. There was a murmur around the table. The governor flushed. "Simply that we wish to increase storage capacity in the lower warehouses," he said, "in case of a poor harvest next year. As our report indicated." Alejandro forced himself to listen, to nod, to give consent where needed. It took an effort that left him more tired than days of travel. After the meeting, Don Mateo approached him. "Is everything well, Your Highness?" he asked. "Forgive me, but you seemed distant." "I am here, am I not?" Alejandro said. "Yes, sir. But your thoughts seemed elsewhere." "They are," he admitted. "Do not press me on it." "Of course, Your Highness," the chamberlain said gently. "However, there is something you should know. A few members of the council remarked on your visit to the bookstall this morning." Alejandro's head snapped up. "What did they say?" "Nothing overt," Don Mateo replied. "Only that it was unusual for a prince to stop so long at a common stall. That you questioned the boy, they found it Charming. The word tasted sour. And our dear governor? Alejandro asked. He is nervous, Don Mateo said. He worries that any unusual attention might reflect poorly if the court hears of it. The court will hear nothing, Alejandro said sharply. It was an innocent conversation with a citizen, nothing more. Of course, sir, the chamberlain said. I have said as much. Still, I thought you should be aware. That will be all, Alejandro said. He left the council hall and walked alone down a side corridor, away from curious eyes. He needed more than suspicions and evasions. He needed facts. That evening he went to the church, accompanied by only one guard at a distance. Father Alonso, the parish priest, greeted him at the door with a deep bow. Your Highness, he said, what an honor. Good evening, Father, Alejandro replied. I hope I do not disturb you. Never, sir, the priest said. The house of God is always open to those who seek it. Alejandro almost smiled at the irony. I seek records, Father, he said. The priest blinked. Records? Yes, births, 6 years ago. A boy named Luis, born to Isabella Santiago. Recognition flickered in the priest's eyes. Ah, he said, a bright child. He recites his prayers louder than all the rest. What about him, Your Highness? I wish to confirm his date of birth, Alejandro said, for administrative purposes. The priest hesitated. These records are private, he began. Alejandro met his gaze. Father, he said quietly, I am the prince of this realm. I do not ask you to betray a confession, only to show me a date in a book. The priest flushed. Forgive me, sir, I did not mean to imply. Come with me. They went into a small side room where shelves held ledgers bound in worn leather. Father Alonso ran a finger along the spines, muttering years under his breath, then drew one out. He opened it on a table, flipping through pages of neat handwriting. Here, he said at last. Luis Santiago, born to Isabella Santiago, unmarried, baptized 2 days after birth. Read the date, Alejandro said. The priest did. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The date fell exactly where Alejandro had known it would, just weeks after Isabella had left Madrid. He felt the room sway for a moment. Are you well, Your Highness? Father Alonso asked. Yes, Alejandro said, though his voice sounded distant to his own ears. Thank you, Father. That will be all. Do you wish to add anything to the record? The priest asked tentatively. A name, perhaps? Alejandro stared at the open page. The temptation to say his own name was a physical ache. Not yet, he said. Not like this. Not here. He turned and left before the priest could question him further. On the way back to the residence, he walked, sending the carriage ahead. Captain Ruiz joined him at a respectful distance. Your Highness, Ruiz said. Forgive my speaking, but there is another matter you should hear. What now? Alejandro asked, more sharply than he intended. Nothing alarming, sir, Ruiz said quickly. Only that the boy, Luis, has been asking about you. Alejandro stopped. What has he said? He told his mother he met the prince, Ruiz answered. He asked if he would come again. He wondered aloud in the square what it must be like to live in a palace. Alejandro looked toward the distant glow of the town. Does she discourage him? He asked. She told him not to fill his head with such dreams, Ruiz said. She said princes live far away. Alejandro exhaled slowly. Did he believe her? He asked. He said he did not know, Ruiz replied. Then he asked if he could learn more words, so that if he ever met you again he would not sound foolish. Alejandro's throat tightened. He will not sound foolish, he said. Ruiz fell silent, sensing the prince's mood. The next morning, Alejandro made a decision. When Don Mateo came to review the day's schedule, Alejandro interrupted him. Add something, he said. A visit to the schools, and to the children who study with the woman in the square. The woman in the square, Don Mateo repeated carefully. Yes, Alejandro said. Is that a problem? Not if we present it as an interest in education, the chamberlain replied quickly. You have spoken often of the importance of literacy. No one would be surprised. Arrange it, Alejandro said. An hour later, the prince's small procession entered the Plaza Mayor again, this time with purpose. Children gathered quickly, called by neighbors, their faces curious and eager. A few clung to their mother's skirts. Others pushed forward. Isabella stood by her table, hands folded, expression careful, Luis bounced on his toes, eyes bright. "Good day," Alejandro said to the assembled group. "I wish to see how the children of Granada learn. I have heard that you have a fine teacher." He nodded toward Isabella. She inclined her head slightly. "We do what we can, Your Highness," she said. "Books are costly, time is short, but the children are willing." Alejandro looked at the small faces. "Who among you can read?" he asked. Several hands shot up. Luis's was among them. "You," Alejandro said, choosing at random. "What is your name?" "Maria, sir." "Come, Maria," he said. "Read for me." She stepped forward, nervous but excited, and took the book Isabella handed her. She read a short passage, stumbling only once. The crowd murmured approval. "Very good," Alejandro said. "You have a strong voice." Maria beamed and stepped back. "And you?" Alejandro asked, turning to Luis. "Can you read as well as Maria?" Luis straightened. "Yes, Your Highness," he said. "I practice every day." "Do you?" Alejandro said. "Will you prove it?" Luis nodded vigorously. Isabella hesitated for half a second, then handed him a book. "Begin here," she said, indicating a paragraph. Luis took a breath and read. His small voice caught once, but he recovered quickly. His eyes moved steadily along the lines. When he finished, he looked up, cheeks flushed. Alejandro felt something swell in his chest. "You read very well," he said. "How old are you now?" "5, sir," Luis said. "Almost 6. "Almost," Alejandro repeated. "You are ahead of many boys your age." Luis's face glowed. "I wish I could see more books," he said. "Mama says there are rooms full of them in palaces." "That is true," Alejandro said. "Perhaps one day you will." Luis's eyes widened. "Truly," he whispered. Isabella cut in quickly. "His imagination runs away with him, Your Highness," she said. "He has chores. Dreams interfere with them." Alejandro met her gaze briefly. "Dreams have their place," he said. "Chores do as well. A wise mother finds room for both." She said nothing. "Would you like to visit the governor's residence, Luis?" Alejandro asked suddenly. "Just for an afternoon, to see more books. We have a small library there." Luis gasped. "May I, Mama?" he begged. "Please?" Isabella's hands tightened on the edge of the table. "That is a generous offer, Your Highness," she said carefully, "but I do not wish to impose." "It is no imposition," Alejandro replied. "I would be pleased to welcome one of Granada's brightest students. He may come tomorrow afternoon." Luis looked from one adult to the other, fear that the moment might vanish written plainly on his face. "Please, Mama," he whispered again. She closed her eyes briefly. "Very well," she said at last. "If it truly does not trouble you, Your Highness." "It will be a pleasure," Alejandro said. The next day, Luis arrived at the governor's residence in his best clothes, which were simple but clean. His hair was combed into some kind of order. He clutched a small slate under his arm, just in case someone asked him to write. A footman led him to a room lined with shelves. Alejandro waited there, alone. When Luis entered, he stopped dead. "There are so many," he breathed. Alejandro smiled. "There are more in Madrid," he said, "but this is a good start." "May I touch them?" Luis asked. "That is what they are there for," Alejandro answered. For the next hour, they moved slowly along the shelves. Alejandro pulled down simple books, pointed to maps, asked questions. Luis answered eagerly, sometimes wrong, always enthusiastic. His laugh filled the room more than once. At one point, Luis turned suddenly. "Your Highness?" he said. "Yes?" "Do you have a son?" the boy asked. The question hit harder than any accusation. "No," Alejandro said after a pause. "I do not." Luis frowned. "That is sad," he said. "You should have someone to show the books to." Alejandro swallowed. "Perhaps one day," he replied. "For now, you are here." Luis considered this, then nodded, apparently satisfied. On their way back to the main hall, they passed a window overlooking the courtyard. A low wall bordered the edge. Luis leaned forward to peer out, placing his hands on the stone. "Look how high we are," he said. "Careful," Alejandro said. Before he could react, Luis shifted his weight, his foot slipping on the polished floor. He pitched forward. Alejandro's hand shot out. He caught the boy by the back of his coat and pulled him firmly away from the edge. Luis stumbled against him, eyes wide. "Are you hurt?" Alejandro demanded. "No," Luis said, breathless. "I am well." "You must not lean like that," Alejandro said, more sharply than he intended. "You could fall." "I did not mean to," Luis whispered, stunned by the prince's tone. Alejandro knelt to bring himself level with the boy. "I know," he said more gently. "I am not angry, only be careful. Some things you cannot take back once they happen." Luis nodded. "I will remember," he said. A maid standing nearby had seen the near mishap. By evening, the story of how the prince had grabbed the Santiago boy to keep him from falling was already traveling around the residence. At dinner, a minor official laughed as he repeated it. "It was almost comical," he said. "The little one nearly kissed the stones, and His Highness caught him like a hen over her chick. I have never seen a prince look so concerned." A few heads turned toward Alejandro at the far end of the table. He kept his expression neutral. "A child in my care nearly fell," he said. "I did what any man would have done." "Of course, Your Highness," the official said. "It is only that, well, the boy does resemble you. It was like watching a man save his own reflection." The room went very still. Alejandro set down his knife. "Children are often alike," he said coldly. "It is dangerous to say otherwise." The official paled. "I meant no disrespect, sir." "Then choose your words more carefully," Alejandro said. Conversation resumed, but more cautiously. Later that night, Don Mateo approached him with a folded letter. "This came from Madrid, Your Highness," he said. "From Her Grace." Alejandro took it, recognizing Sofia's hand. He opened it and read quickly. Her tone, as always, was measured. She wrote of court matters, of a minor dispute between two noble families, of a festival planned for the Queen's patron saint. Then the lines shifted. "I've also heard from more than one source that your visit to Granada has been lively. There is talk of your interest in a local teacher and her son. I am sure the rumors exaggerate, as they always do, but you understand why such stories concern me. Appearances in our position are not ornaments. They are armor." Alejandro's jaw clenched. He read on. "If there is nothing in these tales, I will be pleased to dismiss them. If there is some truth, however small, I ask you to consider how fragile our standing is, especially so early in our marriage. The council watches, the people listen. I have done all I can to behave in a way that honors our union. I trust you will do the same." The letter ended with the usual courtesies. There was no accusation, only a quiet pressure that weighed heavily. He lowered the page. "Is anything wrong, Your Highness?" Don Mateo asked. "Nothing that can be easily named," Alejandro said. "Shall I draft a reply?" the Chamberlain asked, "assuring Her Grace that all is as it should be?" Alejandro folded the letter slowly. "No," he said. "Not yet." "Then what shall I tell the courier?" Don Mateo asked. "Tell him to rest," Alejandro replied. "He will not be returning alone." The Chamberlain frowned. "I do not understand, sir." Alejandro held the letter in his hand, its edges digging into his fingers. "Send a message to Madrid," he said, "to the Duchess. Inform her that if she wishes to know the truth of these rumors, she is welcome to see Granada with her own eyes." Don Mateo stared. "Your Highness, you mean to invite Her Grace here?" "I am not inviting her," Alejandro said. "I am warning her. She will come." "How can you be sure?" the Chamberlain asked. Alejandro's gaze drifted to the window, where the lights of the town glimmered faintly. "Because Sofia has never trusted other people's words when she can gather her own," he said. "She will come to Granada as soon as she can." Duchess Sofia of Valdeoro arrived in Granada 3 days later, just as Alejandro had known she would. Her carriage entered the city without fanfare, flanked by a modest escort. No trumpets, no parade. She had always preferred quiet entrances. It was her way of gathering more truth than ceremony allowed. Alejandro waited for her in the governor's reception hall. When the door opened, he saw at once that the journey had not ruffled her composure. Her dark hair was perfectly arranged, her dress travel simple but finely cut. Her gaze, as ever, missed very little. She crossed the room and curtsied. "Your Highness," she said. He bowed to her. "Your Grace." "You made good time." "Rumors travel quickly," she answered. "I try not to let them outrun me too far." There was no warmth in her voice, but there was no anger either. Only control. The governor, hovering anxiously nearby, started to speak. Your Highness, if you wish, I can have refreshments. Leave us, Alejandro said. The man bowed and retreated, as did the servants, until only the prince and duchess remained. For a moment, they simply regarded one another. You wished to see the truth with your own eyes, Alejandro said at last. You have traveled far for it. Sit, Sophia. She sat on a straight-backed chair by the window. He remained standing. I admit, she said. I expected you to deny everything in your letter, to tell me that our dear court had exaggerated a passing kindness into some sentimental tale. Our court exaggerates many things, he replied. This is not one of them. Her fingers tightened briefly on the arm of the chair. Then there is a woman, she said softly, and a child. Yes. The same woman they whispered about in Madrid years ago, she asked. That caught him. What whispers? He demanded. She gave him a faint, dry smile. You think the palace does not notice when a prince disappears from formal dinners to visit a small bookseller's shop? She asked. Not everyone believed it was only a love of reading that led you there. Why did no one say anything? He asked. Because they expected you to grow out of it, she said, and because your father always assumed duty would win in the end. Apparently it did, for a time. He looked away. Yes, he said, for a time. Sophia studied him. Tell me, she said. Plainly. Who are they? A woman named Isabella Santiago, he said, once the daughter of a bookseller in Madrid, now a teacher in Granada, and her son, Luis. Her son, she repeated. Not yours? He was silent. You did not answer my letter, she said. You only invited me here. I thought it best to speak face to face, he said. She nodded once. Then speak, she said. I can bear more than silence. He drew a breath. The boy was born 6 years ago, he said, after I sent her away. I have seen the record. I have spoken to the midwife. I have seen his face. And, she asked, he is my son, Alejandro said quietly. There is no doubt. The words came out with a strange sense of relief and pain combined. Sophia inhaled slowly, as if bracing herself. You are certain, she said. Yes. Does the woman admit it? She refuses to say the words, he replied, but she will not lie. Her silence is answer enough. Sophia looked down at her hands for a moment. And he is what? She asked. 5? 6? 5, nearly 6, Alejandro said. He reads better than many 12-year-olds at court. How proud you sound, she murmured. He did not deny it. I never knew, he said. I sent her away thinking I was protecting her. I did not know she was with child. I did not ask. I did not even imagine. That is the measure of my blindness. Sophia lifted her head. Why are you telling me all this? She asked. You could have kept it hidden. Many men do. I have hidden enough, he said. I will not add lies to my failures. You are my wife, Sophia. Whatever else we are not to each other, we share that bond. You have a right to the truth. A faint, wry amusement touched her mouth. You speak as if we share more than a signature on a marriage contract, she said. You must not dress our union in poetry, Alejandro. It embarrasses us both. I do not mean poetry, he said. I mean respect. She considered him. Very well, she said. Let us speak with respect, then. You have a son with another woman. This is not unheard of in our world. Annoying, perhaps. Inconvenient, but not uncommon. Something else troubles you. Yes, he said. Everything about it. Because you love her, Sophia said without flinching. The room went quiet. Yes, he answered. How long? She asked. Since before I had the sense to understand the word, he replied. Since I first walked into her father's shop pretending to look for a volume I did not need. And you still do, she said. Yes, he said again. Sophia nodded slowly, almost as if she were confirming a calculation. I see, she murmured. This marriage has never truly existed between us, he said. Not as it was intended. We have shared a table, a life in name, but there is no union, no child, no warmth, only duty. You think I have not noticed? She asked gently. I am not blind, Alejandro, nor am I a girl raised on stories. I have always known that your heart was elsewhere. Our families wanted a bridge, not a romance. And did you never hope for more? He asked. Hope, she said, is a dangerous luxury in politics. I hoped only that you would not shame me. So far you have not openly. That is exactly what I am in danger of doing now, he said. Yes, she agreed. So why invite me here? Why tell me this? Why not keep your visits to the square discreet and your feelings quiet? He looked at her squarely. Because I do not want to live like that, he said. I do not want to sneak through my own kingdom to see my own son as if he were a crime. I do not want you trapped in a marriage built on a lie we both know too well. I want to set it right, as far as I can. And how, she asked, do you propose to do that? He hesitated. This was the heart of it. Our marriage has never been complete, he said carefully. There is no heir, no true bond between us. It was entered for reasons of state, not of mutual will. An annulment handled with care could be argued. Our families would resist, but we both know alternatives exist. Your brother has sons. My cousins exist. Alliances can be forged in other ways. It would not be easy, but it is not impossible. You speak lightly of untying knots that took years to weave, she said. I know it will be difficult, he replied, but I also know this. If we continue as we are, our kingdoms may seem stable, but we ourselves will grow more and more divided. On one side, the life we show the world. On the other, the truth. I am tired, Sophia. Tired of standing precisely between those two things. She watched him in silence for a moment. You expect me to agree, she said. I expect you to be honest, he answered. You are a duchess. You know the cost of a hollow alliance. You know how rumors grow. Today they talk of a mistress and a child. Tomorrow, perhaps, of a prince who hides more than that. If we face this openly, we may shape the story instead of being crushed by it. And what story would that be? She asked. That Sophia of Valdeoro was so unbearable a wife that the prince begged to be freed. No, he said quickly. That Sophia of Valdeoro saw the rot in an arrangement made without her heart, and had the courage to refuse to live by appearances alone. That she chose a different path, and in so doing prevented scandals worse than any annulment. You are generous with my courage, she said, less so with your own. He accepted the rebuke. I am trying, he said. She sighed, letting some of the steel leave her shoulders. Let me be plain, Alejandro, she said. I do not love you. I doubt I ever could in the way ballads describe. I respect you most days. I fear what you are capable of hiding from yourself. I pity the woman who owns your heart, because she has paid a high price for it. And I pity that child who has not known you until now, because he will carry questions even if you give him answers. He lowered his head. I deserve your contempt, he murmured. I did not say contempt, she replied. If I despised you, this would be simpler. But I have watched you these last years. You have tried in your stiff, stubborn way to be a good prince. You listen more than most. You refuse easy cruelties. That counts for something. It does not erase. Nothing will erase it, she said. So we must decide what to do with what remains. He met her gaze again. What do you wish? He asked. She paused. In my family, she said slowly, we were taught that honor lies in keeping one's place, not in chasing one's desires. I believed that for a long time. It kept me upright when I married a stranger for the sake of 2 flags. But in the quiet of my rooms, I sometimes wondered if there was another kind of honor, the kind that refuses to make a life out of pretense. And now? He asked. Now I have met the woman behind the rumors, she said. He blinked. You have met her? He asked. When? This morning, Sophia replied, while you attended your military inspection. I had the carriage stop in the square. I asked to see the teacher who lends books to children. You spoke to Isabella, he said, stunned. Yes, she replied. I did not give my name. I asked if she had any stories about queens who chose their own fate. She said there were few, but she offered me a history book instead. What did you see? He asked, almost afraid. I saw a woman who stands very straight, Sophia said, who has likely been pushed often and learned not to sway. I saw a boy who watched every movement around him, as if trying to understand a world that does not quite fit. I saw your eyes twice over, once in a face that still has some softness left, once in a child who does not yet know how much his likeness will cost him. Alejandro swallowed. And what did you decide? He asked. She looked at him without flinching. I will not spend the rest of my life guarding a marriage that never had a soul, she said. I will not sit beside you at tables, smiling for the sake of appearances, while a boy grows up thinking his father chose silence over his name. I will not lend my title to a lie that harms a child. I mean, she interrupted, that if an annulment can be arranged without war, I will not oppose it. Relief flooded him so sharply he had to grip the back of a chair. Sophia, he began. Do not thank me, she said. Save your gratitude for the day you stand before your council and speak the truth without fainting. A breath of almost laughter escaped him. I will try not to faint, he said. You will be pale, she predicted, but you have always been better with speeches than you think. He sobered. It will not be immediate, he said. We will need to build a case. Your family must be approached carefully. My parents must be persuaded this is less dangerous than pretending nothing has changed. I know, she said. I will write to my brother. He trusts my judgment. If I present this as a strategic move, not a romantic whim, he will listen. He may be angry, but anger cools. A scandal does not. Thank you, Alejandro said, and this time she did not stop him. Meanwhile, she continued, you must be discreet without being deceitful. Do not parade the boy in front of everyone yet. Do not hide him as if he were a sin. Visit him, but with plausible reasons. Speak of literacy. You have always cared for it. Let that be your shield. I will not hide who he is from him, Alejandro said quietly. Not much longer. That is between you and the mother, she replied. But remember, a whispered truth is still better than a shouted lie. He nodded. And you? He asked. Will you remain here? For a short time, she said, to witness how you act when you believe yourself unobserved. Do not grimace. It is better that I see with my own eyes than with others' tongues. When I return to Madrid, I will need to speak with authority. He accepted that. Very well, he said. You will have what you need. See that I do, she replied. Go to her now, Alejandro. You look like a man holding words that will choke him if he swallows them again. He almost smiled. You do not lack for accuracy, he said. She rose. I lack for many things, she answered, but not that. He bowed to her once more. When he left the residence, he did not send for a carriage. He walked to the square. The afternoon was bright, the air alive with voices. Children called to each other. A vendor argued over the price of fruit. Somewhere, a man tuned a guitar. At the bookstall, Isabella arranged a row of worn volumes. Luis sat on a small stool beside her, chalk on his fingers, copying letters onto a slate. Alejandro stopped a few paces away. Good afternoon, he said. Isabella did not flinch. She had sensed him before he spoke. Your Highness, she replied. The children were not expecting a lesson from a prince today. I came alone, he said. No guards close enough to gossip, I promise. May we talk? She glanced at Luis. Go inside for a moment, she told him. Ask Doña Carmen if she has finished with the mending. I have not, child, the dressmaker called from the doorway. But I will find something for you to carry. Never fear. Luis sighed, put his slate down, and skipped toward the door. Do not go far, Isabella called. I will not, Mama. When he had disappeared into the dim interior, she turned back to Alejandro. You should not be here like this, she said. It draws eyes. Let them look, he answered softly. I have spent years hiding, Isabella. I am done with it. And your Duchess? She asked. Has she nothing to say about where you spend your afternoons? She has much to say, he replied, and I have just heard it. Her hand stilled on a book. She is here, Isabella said. Yes. And she knows everything, he said, about you, about Luis, about me. Isabella's shoulders tightened. You risk more than your own skin when you speak so freely, she said. She could ruin us with a few carefully chosen words. She will not, he said. She has seen you. She has seen him. Her gaze snapped to his. She came here? She asked. Yes, earlier today. She spoke with you. Isabella searched her memory, then frowned. The lady asking for stories about queens, she murmured. That was her, he said. She let out a breath. I thought she had a sharp eye, she said. I should have guessed. She admired your spine, he said, though she did not use that exact word. I do not care for her admiration, Isabella replied. What does she intend? To step aside, he said, if it can be done without ripping two kingdoms apart. Isabella stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign tongue. You expect me to believe that a duchess will calmly give up her position because you found your conscience? she asked. "Do you think me a child?" "I think you have suffered enough to doubt anything good," he said quietly. "But I am telling you the truth. She does not love me. She does not wish to spend her life guarding a marriage that has no life in it. She will support an annulment." "And her family?" Isabella demanded. "Her council? Your parents? Do they all share her goodwill?" "Not yet," he admitted, "but we will work on them together. Sophia will write to her brother. I will speak with my father and mother when I return. It will not be simple. It will not be quick. But for the first time I am not alone in wanting a different path." "And what path is that?" she asked. He stepped closer. "One that leads to you," he said. "To you and Luis. Not as secrets I steal time with, but as my family. The family I should have claimed years ago." Her heart beat faster at his words, but she kept her face guarded. "You speak of annulments and councils as if they were ink and paper," she said. "In truth, they are stone, heavy, hard, unwilling to move." "I know," he said, "but stone can crack. I have seen it break under the right pressure." "And what if it does not?" she asked. "What if they say no? What if your father refuses? What if your duchess is overruled? What then, Alejandro? Will you let them drag you back to Madrid and tell you that this was a pleasant dream?" He looked at her with a steadiness she had rarely seen in him. "If they refuse," he said, "I will step away." She frowned. "Step away from what?" "From the succession," he said, "from the path they built for me, from the crown. I will not live half a life any longer." Her breath caught. "You would give up your throne?" she whispered. "I would give up the idea of it," he said. "I have never worn it, only felt its weight waiting for me. If that weight means losing you again, I do not want it." She shook her head as if trying to clear it. "Do not make promises in a market square," she said. "They sound handsome here, they sound different in council halls and throne rooms." "I am tired of making handsome speeches in halls," he replied. "This is the only place I trust my own voice." She looked at his face, searching for hesitation. There was fear there, yes, but beneath it, something solid. "And Luis?" she asked. "Where does he fit in this great plan of yours?" "At the center," Alejandro said. "If I remain prince, I will fight to have him recognized, even if not as heir, acknowledged, protected, loved openly. If I step away, he will still be my son. I will still raise him, teach him, walk beside him. I will not disappear from his life as I did from yours." Emotion rose so suddenly in her chest, she had to grip the table. "You speak as if I have already agreed to let you near him," she said, her voice unsteady. "As if everything depends on councils and decrees and not on me." He stopped, truly hearing that. "You are right," he said. "It depends on you most of all. I am asking, Isabella, not demanding, not ordering, asking. Will you allow me to try to make this right, to stand beside you and our son, however long it takes to rearrange the world around us?" She turned away, staring at the worn edges of the books. Her fingers moved over them without focus. "What if you fail?" she asked. "Then I will fail in the open," he said. "With you knowing I tried, with Luis knowing I did not choose comfort over him a second time." She closed her eyes. She saw herself years ago in the carriage leaving Madrid, alone, humiliated, carrying a purse she had not wanted, and a life inside her she had not expected. She had sworn then never to depend on him for anything again. And yet, for all her strength, for all her hard-won independence, there remained a place in her that had never stopped asking what might have been if he had chosen differently. Now here he was, offering to choose differently at last. She turned back slowly. "You cannot give me back the years I raised him alone," she said. "The nights I stayed awake, wondering how I would buy bread. The times I watched him look at other men in the square and ask why he did not have a father to lift him onto his shoulders." "I know," he said softly. "You cannot erase the moment you pressed that purse into my hand and told me to vanish," she continued. "It will always be there, Alejandro, between us." "I know," he said again. "Then understand this," she said. "If I say yes, if I let you try, I am not the same girl who walked into that carriage. I am not a secret to be moved on a board. I am a woman who survived you once. I will not be destroyed by you a second time." His eyes shone. "I would rather die than harm you again," he said. "Do not speak of death," she snapped. "Speak of living rightly." He inclined his head. "Very well," he said. I will spend the rest of my life trying. Silence fell between them, full and fragile. At last she drew a breath. Then try, she said. He stared. Isabella, do not fall at my feet, she said quickly. Do not thank me. This is not forgiveness. It is an opening, a crack in the door. You will have to push the rest open yourself. He nodded, almost reverently. That is more than I deserve, he murmured. Luis's voice floated from inside the shop. Mama? Doña Carmen needs me to carry a basket. Come out then, Isabella called back. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway, a small basket looped over his arm. His face brightened when he saw Alejandro. Your Highness. Hello, Luis, Alejandro said. Busy today? I am helping, Luis said proudly. Soon I will be strong enough to carry the big baskets. You will, Alejandro agreed. I am sure of it. Luis stepped closer. Will you show me more books again? He asked. There were maps I did not finish looking at. Alejandro glanced at Isabella. She hesitated only a moment. If His Highness has the time, she said, her voice steady, and if he does not mind loud questions, I see no harm in it. Alejandro's heart thudded once, hard. I never mind questions, he said. Good, Luis said cheerfully. I have many. I suspected as much, Alejandro replied. He held out his hand. Luis placed his small fingers in his without thinking, as if it were the most natural action in the world. Isabella watched them, a strange tightness in her chest. Fear, yes, but also something warmer, more dangerous. Alejandro felt the boy's hand in his, warm and real, and knew that whatever battles waited ahead in council chambers and palaces, this was the ground he would fight for. As they started toward the governor's residence together, Isabella walked a few steps behind, her gaze fixed on the two figures before her, the man who had once broken her, and the child who had remade her life. For the first time, they were side by side. Word of Alejandro's request traveled to Madrid faster than he did. By the time he reached the palace, the air itself felt charged. Servants looked away. Guards stood a little straighter. The familiar corridors seemed narrower, as if the stone listened. Don Mateo walked a step behind him, carrying a leather folder. At the great doors of the council chamber, the herald announced him. His Highness, Prince Alejandro de Castillas. The doors opened. Inside, the long table was crowded. Councillors, ministers, 2 bishops, the heads of the army. At the far end, the king and queen sat side by side, their faces set in solemn lines. On the queen's right, Duchess Sofia sat with her hands folded, posture impeccable. Alejandro entered and bowed. Father, mother, your graces, my lords. The king's gaze was hard. We are told, he said without preamble, that you have something urgent to lay before us, Alejandro, something that cannot wait for a private audience. That is correct, Alejandro replied. I wish for nothing hidden. A murmur ran around the table. The queen leaned forward. Sit, my son, she said, more gently. He remained standing. I will stand, he said. This concerns my place at this table. It is best spoken on my feet. Sophia's eyes slid briefly toward him, a calm signal that she was there, as agreed. The king's jaw tightened. Very well, he said. Speak. Alejandro drew a breath. 6 years ago, he said, before my marriage to her grace, I behaved with great cowardice. I gave my heart to a woman I was not free to marry, then cast her aside when duty called, thinking a purse of coins could tidy what my conscience did not wish to see. Several councillors shifted uncomfortably. He continued, That woman, Isabella Santiago, left Madrid at my command. She did not return. She bore alone what I should have shared with her. She raised in silence what I should have claimed from the first day. He met his father's eyes. She bore my son. The chamber erupted in whispers. Someone cursed under his breath. A bishop lifted a hand to his mouth. The king's face went still. Your son, he repeated. Yes, Alejandro said. A boy named Luis. He lives in Granada. I have seen him. I have seen his birth record. I have spoken to the priest, the midwife, the neighbors. There is no doubt. The queen's hand tightened around the arm of her chair. And you have concealed this from us for 6 years, the king said, each word slow. I did not know of his existence for 6 years, Alejandro replied. That is my sin. I never asked. I never wondered. I only assumed that what I did not see could not harm me. And now, the king demanded, now you dare come before us and proclaim this. What do you expect us to do? Applaud your confession? Fold this indiscretion into our plans as if it were nothing? Alejandro did not flinch. I expect you to hear all of it, he said. Not only my shame. Queen Maria spoke then, her voice low. There is more? Yes, mother. He turned to the councillors. Our marriage, he said, glancing at Sophia, was arranged with care, with political foresight, with every consideration except one, the willingness of the hearts involved. We have fulfilled our duties, we have attended ceremonies, we have upheld appearances. We have shared a table, Sophia added calmly, rising to her feet. But not a life. All eyes swung to her. This is not easy for a woman to say in such company, she went on. But it must be said if we are to be honest. Our marriage exists on paper. It does not exist in truth. One of the older councillors sputtered. Your Grace, he said, such things are not for public discussion. With respect, my lord, Sophia cut in, the entire realm discusses the heir's marriage, in ballrooms, in market squares, in letters. It is time we stopped pretending the reality is unknown to us while it is known to everyone else. The Queen's cheeks flushed faintly, but she did not interrupt. Alejandro took the thread again. This arrangement has not produced an heir, he said simply. It has not produced unity. It has produced only a quiet distance that grows each year. I stand before you to say that I will not build a throne on top of that falsehood. If I am to lead this kingdom one day, I must do so with a whole heart, not a divided one. The king's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. And what does your whole heart demand then? It demands that I acknowledge my son, Alejandro said, that I bring to the light what I forced into the shadows. It demands that I stop asking my wife to stand beside me in a marriage that has never truly been hers, or mine. It demands that I seek an annulment and accept whatever consequences follow. The chamber exploded. You would dissolve a royal marriage? Destroy an alliance? Invite unrest? Shame your parents? The words came from every side. Alejandro waited, let the noise crest, then lifted his voice. Silence. The room stilled. I know what I am asking, he said. I know the danger. That is why I say this as plainly as I can. If an annulment cannot be obtained, if my insistence on truth makes me unfit to sit on this throne, then I will step aside. I will renounce my claim. I will live as a lesser prince if need be. But I will not return to Granada and tell my son that I chose a crown over his name. His father stared at him, disbelief etched in every line of his face. You would throw away what generations built, he said. For a woman and a bastard boy. The Queen flinched at the word. Sophia's jaw tightened. Alejandro's eyes hardened. I would refuse to add another generation's lie to what they built, he answered. As for the boy, he is not a bastard in my eyes. He is my son. I am the one who has behaved without legitimacy, not him. Queen Maria spoke then, her voice steady but strained. What of the Duchess? She asked. Has she been consulted in this plan of yours? Sophia lifted her chin. Yes, Your Majesty, she said. He did me the courtesy of speaking to me before standing here. I support what he proposes. The king wheeled toward her. You support the dissolution of your own marriage? He demanded. I support the dissolution of an illusion, she replied. We are not husband and wife in any meaningful sense. We are partners in a treaty. Treaties can be rewritten. If we insist on maintaining a lie, we invite something worse than scandal. We invite rot. Her brother, Duke Fernando of Valdeoro, sat halfway down the table. He had arrived earlier that morning, having been summoned in haste. His face was like carved stone. And what of our two realms? He asked. What of the peace we secured with your wedding? Am I to face my nobles and tell them their duchess was sent back unused? Sophia's eyes flashed. Do not speak of me as an object, brother, she said. I walked into this marriage with my head high. I will walk out of it the same way. Our peace can be maintained in other ways. My hand is not the only bridge between our lands. Easy to say in this hall, Fernando replied. Harder when tempers rise in mine. Queen Maria looked between them. What alternative do you offer? She asked quietly. If the marriage is annulled, how do we keep the alliance? Sophia drew a breath. My cousin, Inez, she said. Young, well-connected, ambitious, and currently unpromised. She has long wished for a role beyond our borders. If she weds one of your nephews, the bond remains. Different thread. Same tapestry. A murmur of interest circled the table. The king glared. You speak as if you have rearranged my family already, he grumbled. You asked for truth, father, Alejandro said. We bring you options, not demands without thought. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Queen Maria, who had been watching her husband with the focus of a woman who had lived a lifetime beside him, laid her hand lightly over his. Listen to them, she murmured. The world is changing. We cannot pretend our children feel nothing because we prefer our comfort. He looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Weariness crept in where anger had been. You knew? He asked quietly. I suspected, she said. A mother always does. I chose not to see, because seeing meant acting. I am tired of closing my eyes. He exhaled, the sound more like a groan than a sigh. He looked at Alejandro. You disgrace me, he said. Shall you humble me? You frighten me. Alejandro straightened, taking the words like blows he had expected. Yet, the king went on slowly, for the first time in years, I almost believe you might be a king. The room shifted. Several councillors looked up sharply. You stand before us and offer to give up everything we trained you for, the king said. Not for pleasure, not for a whim, for conscience. I do not understand it. I do not like it, but I cannot entirely despise it. He leaned back, lines deepening around his mouth. This will take time, he said. Letters must be written, Rome consulted, our nobles made to accept. Your cousin Rodrigo will have thoughts about his own future if you step aside. Duke Fernando will need binding offers for his cousin. Fernando nodded grudgingly. I will, the king continued, consider an annulment. If it can be achieved without setting our realm on fire, I will not stand in the way. On one condition. Alejandro met his eyes. Name it. You do not run from this hall and marry the girl tomorrow in some country church, the king said. You do not parade the boy as a political tool. You let this be done cleanly, with order. You give us time to reshape what you have broken. Alejandro nodded. I will not rush the form, he said. Only the truth. The king grunted. Truth has already run ahead, he muttered. We are just trying to catch its coat. He looked at Sophia. And you? He asked. Will you stand firm in this when your court whispers that you were cast off? She lifted her chin. I will tell them I chose not to live a comfortable lie, she said. Some will respect that. Others will not. I no longer care to shape my soul to fit their talk. The king studied her, then inclined his head slightly. You were a good bargain, he said. We did not deserve you. She smiled faintly. No one ever does, she replied. Quiet laughter rippled around the table, easing the air. The queen turned to her son. Go back to Granada, she said. You have set the wheel turning. Let us do the work here. When the time is right, we will send for you. In the meantime, be careful, and be kind to that boy. He will need more gentleness than this hall ever gave you. Alejandro bowed his head. I will, mother. He left the council chamber feeling as if he had walked through fire and come out with skin intact. Weeks later, back in Granada, the sun hung warm above the small church at the edge of the square. The crowd gathered was not large. A few local notables, the governor, Father Alonso in his plain vestments. Duchess Sophia stood to one side, veiled not in mourning, but in discretion. Duke Fernando was absent. He had returned to Valdeoro to begin his own negotiations. Isabella stood near the front, her hands clasped tightly around a worn handkerchief. Luis fidgeted at her side in his best clothes, trying to look solemn and failing every other heartbeat. Mama, he whispered, tugging at her sleeve, why are there so many important people? Did someone die? She choked on a laugh. No one died, querido, she murmured. Quite the opposite. He looked unconvinced, but obediently fell quiet. Alejandro waited near the altar, dressed not in full royal splendor, but in a dark coat with the crest of Castillas embroidered modestly at the collar. The only jewelry he wore was a simple ring bearing his family's seal. Father Alonso cleared his throat. My friends, he said, his voice carrying farther than his age suggested, we gather today for a rare thing in this world, a truth spoken out loud where everyone can hear it. A ripple of curiosity moved through the room. Alejandro stepped forward. His heart beat hard, but his voice was steady. "Some of you know," he said, "and some have only guessed. Rumors have flown like birds over these rooftops. It is time to let them rest." He looked toward Luis, who stared back at him with wide eyes. "This boy," Alejandro said, "is named in your records as Luis Santiago, born out of wedlock to a brave woman who should never have had to face the world alone." His gaze met Isabella's. "I cannot erase those years," he said softly, "but I can stand here now and speak the words I should have spoken on the day of his birth." He turned back to the assembled people. "I am Prince Alejandro de Castillas," he said, "and this child is my son." The words rang against stone. There was a collective intake of breath. A woman in the back crossed herself. The governor stared, color draining from his face. Then slowly someone nodded. Another murmured, "I knew it." Acceptance did not roar. It grew, like a tide. Isabella felt her knees threaten to give way. She forced herself upright. Father Alonso smiled, eyes bright. "We amend the record today," he said, "not with ink but with witness. In heaven's book this was always true, now it is true in ours as well." He beckoned to Luis. "Come here, child." Luis shot a quick look at his mother. She nodded. He walked forward, small shoulders squared. Father Alonso laid a hand gently on his head. "From this day," he said, "we recognize you not only as Luis Santiago, son of Isabella, but as Luis de Castillas y Santiago, natural son of Prince Alejandro." Alejandro stepped closer and placed his own hand over Luis's narrow shoulder. The boy looked up at him, stunned. Is that my name now?" he whispered. "Yes," Alejandro answered, his voice thick. "If you want it." Luis considered, then nodded. "It sounds long," he said, "but I like it." Soft laughter rippled through the church. "You may shorten it when you are older," Alejandro said. "For now, wear all of it. It suits you." He squeezed the boy's shoulder gently, then released him. Luis ran back to Isabella, eyes shining. "Mama," he whispered, "did you hear? I have a prince's name." "You have your father's name," she replied, smoothing his hair. "The rest is noise." Alejandro turned back to the gathering. "Some will call this foolish," he said. "Some will say it weakens the crown. I say a crown that fears truth is already weak. I will not pretend this child does not exist simply because his story began in the wrong order." Duchess Sophia stepped forward a half pace, veiled face turned toward him. "Nor will your former wife," she said clearly. "I stand here as witness, not as wronged duchess, but as woman whose name is tied to this family's history. Let it be written, I do not oppose this act, I approve it. A realm built on lies cracks in the first storm. I prefer stone that has been broken and mended to one that crumbles at the first test." The town would speak of that sentence for years. Father Alonso raised his hands. "There is another matter," he said, "a union once severed by fear, perhaps ready to be tied anew." All eyes turned to Isabella. She felt her pulse in her throat. Alejandro walked toward her, each step measured. He stopped a few paces away. After all their years of secrets and shadows, it felt almost unbearably strange to have everyone watching. "Isabella," he said quietly, though every word carried, "once I asked you to leave in shame. Today I ask you to stand with me in honor." She swallowed. "You are a prince," she replied. "Your honor does not need me." He shook his head. "Without you it is only metal," he said, "a hollow thing. You gave me the only part of myself that ever felt real. I threw it away once, I will not do it again." He did not kneel. It was not their way. Instead, he took one step closer and extended his hand, palm up, between them. "I cannot promise you a quiet life," he said. "The world will talk. Some will smile to our faces and curse us in their kitchens. Some will call you lucky. Others will call you foolish. They will call our son many things. But I can promise you this. You will never again face their words alone. When they speak of you, they will speak of us. When they look at him, they will see my eyes and know I chose him." She stared at his hand. "Your father agreed to this," she whispered. "He agreed to the annulment," Alejandro said. "Rome is slow, but its ink is nearly dry. Our marriage, mine and Sophia's, will be declared null in the eyes of heaven and earth. I will likely never be crowned. The succession will pass to Rodrigo with conditions. I have signed documents I never thought to sign in my life. And yet you stand upright, she said, half in wonder. Crownless, he said, not headless. Despite herself, a small smile touched her mouth. He saw it, and his voice softened. I know I cannot erase what I did, he said. I know trust is not a cloak I can drape over your shoulders with a word. But I love you, Isabella. I have loved you through 7 years of silence. I loved you when I tried not to. I loved you when I convinced myself duty mattered more. I was wrong. I am asking you, in front of everyone whose opinion once terrified me, to be my wife. The church held its breath. Luis clutched Isabella's skirt, looking up at her, eyes huge. Mama, he whispered. Do you want that? She looked down at him. What do you think? She asked softly. He chewed his lip. Will he stay? He asked. Always? Not just for books and lessons? Alejandro answered before she could. If your mother allows, he said, I will stay until you grow tired of seeing my face at the breakfast table. Luis thought hard. I do not think I will grow tired, he decided. He looked up at Isabella again. I like when he is here, he said. You smile more, even when you try not to. And when he is gone, you look out the window too much. Her throat burned. Out of the mouths of children, she thought. She lifted her gaze to Alejandro. You will not send me away again, she said. Not for a treaty. Not for a new alliance. Not because someone at court frowns at me. Never, he said. If I am asked to choose again between some paper agreement and the life we have, I will burn the paper myself. You say that now, she replied. What if the kingdom demands something else someday? He held her eyes. Then the kingdom will have to find a different son to obey it, he said. I have paid that price once. I will not write the same receipt twice. Her lips trembled. And Luis? She asked. What of him when they ask who he is? When they tell him he was born wrong? Alejandro stepped closer still. Then I will tell him, he said, that he was born right, that his parents were the ones who walked wrong around him. That love sometimes arrives out of order, but is no less real. I will tell him that he is proof that truth will find its way, even if it must wait years. There were tears in his eyes now. He did not hide them. And you? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. What shall I tell him about you if he asks why you said yes or no? She looked at him, at his open hand, at the boy at her side, at Sophia, veiled and straight-backed, watching with something like a blessing in her eyes, at the queen's son who had walked away from a throne to stand simply as a man before her. Tell him, she said, that his mother was afraid, that she had every reason to be, that she did not trust princes, that she barely trusted her own heart, but that one day she decided that fear would not raise her son. Love would. She lifted her hand and placed it firmly in his. The church seemed to exhale. Luis squealed before remembering where he was. He clapped his hands over his mouth, eyes shining. Alejandro's fingers closed around Isabella's. Is that a yes? He asked, a broken laugh in his voice. She nodded once. Yes, Alejandro, she said. I will marry you. The sound that followed was not the roar of a great court, but the warm, uneven applause of townsfolk, of servants, of a few surprised nobles who found themselves smiling in spite of every rule they had ever learned. Father Alonso raised his hands again. Then let us bless what fear once tried to tear apart, he said. We will not wait for Rome to tell us we may rejoice. Heaven is not so slow. The ceremony that followed was simple. Alejandro and Isabella stood side by side, hands joined as vows were spoken. There were no jeweled crowns, no ornate train of fabric. Only a small bouquet someone pressed into Isabella's hands at the last moment, and the quiet conviction in their voices. I take you, Alejandro said, not as a secret, not as a duty, but as my chosen companion, in whatever house we may live, under whatever title we may or may not bear. I take you, Isabella replied, her voice clear, not as a prince, not as the boy who hurt me, but as the man who stood and told the world he had been wrong. When it was done, when Father Alonso pronounced them husband and wife, Luis threw his arms around both of them at once. Does this mean I have 2 last names and 2 parents now? He asked, somewhat overwhelmed by his own good fortune. Yes, Isabella laughed through tears. It does. And 2 hands to hold when I am afraid, he added. Alejandro bent and kissed the top of his head. "At least 2, he said. "There will be more. Friends, family, people who will hold you up when we stumble. No one stands alone forever, Luis." The feast that followed was half palace, half village, long tables in the governor's courtyard, dishes from every kitchen, wine in simple cups. Sophia sat with the queen, who had come quietly, wrapped in an unadorned shawl and relief. They spoke not of loss, but of possibility. "You will be free now to choose differently," Queen Maria said. Sophia smiled. "I think," she said, "I will choose myself for a while. It is time I learned who I am without a banner over my head." "And if some young lord comes sniffing around?" the queen teased gently. "I will tell him to read a book," Sophia replied. "If he returns with an opinion about it, I may let him stay for tea." They laughed, and for once the sound was not strained. As the sun lowered, Alejandro found a moment alone with Isabella on a balcony overlooking the courtyard. Below, Luis chased other children around the fountain, his laughter rising like music. Alejandro leaned on the stone rail. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Which part?" she said. "Giving back your purse? Saying yes? Not throwing this cup of wine at your head when you mispronounced the midwife's name earlier?" He chuckled. "Any of it." She looked out at the courtyard. "We will have hard days," she said. "There will be mornings when the weight of your family's name sits heavy on my shoulders. There will be nights when I remember Madrid and feel old wounds ache. But regret?" She shook her head. "No. I regret 6 years of silence. I do not regret that they ended." His hand found hers, fingers threading easily now. "I spent so long thinking duty meant cutting myself into pieces," he said. "One for the council, one for the people, one hidden for myself. I thought that was strength." "And now?" she asked. "Now I think strength is standing whole," he replied. "Even when others would prefer you in fragments." She nodded. "Promise me one thing," she said. "Anything. If ever we begin to lie to ourselves again," she said, "if ever we start hiding pieces of our hearts from one another for the sake of peace, you will remember this courtyard, this day, and you will come to me and say, 'We are slipping into shadows.'" He smiled. "You have my word," he said, "and if you are the one to notice first, you must promise the same." "I do," she said. They stood in comfortable silence a moment. Below, Luis looked up and saw them together at the balcony. "Papa!" he shouted, the word new and bright on his tongue. "Mama, look at me." They leaned over the railing. He stood on the edge of the fountain now, arms spread, pretending to be a tightrope walker. "Careful!" both parents called at once. He grinned. "I am not afraid," he said. "You are both here. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories, full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.